Hi, this is Bronwyn the Brave, and I'm demonstrating the corner-to-corner crochet technique. In this video, I show you how to change colors, and I also give you some tips for carrying the yarn so you don't have quite as many ends to weave in. Because I'm not gonna lie, there are a lot of ends in some of these designs, but I think the payoff is definitely worth it. We begin with a chain 6. I have my first 4 chains here, so here's my 5 and 6, and then we double crochet into the 4th chain from the hook. So we count down 1, you don't count the loop that's on your hook, so the first one's here, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And I usually go under 2 loops, but it's a personal preference. So then we wrap and pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, and then we do 2 more double crochets, 1 in each of those next chains. So we yarn over and into the next chain, double crochet here, this last one is always a little tricky for me. All right, there's our first block. So it looks a little rectangular right now, but once we start adding the blocks to it, then it squares up. It's kind of an interesting thing. So that's the first row. Easy enough. And now we work the second row. So we're going to turn. You can either turn and then chain or chain and then turn. It makes no difference really. So I'm going to turn and then chain 6. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And we'll do the same thing as we did before. So we count 1, 2, 3, and 4, so the 4th chain from the hook, and we work a double crochet into that one. Oops, I split my yarn. Try not to do that. So double crochet here, and in the next 2 chains. Okay, so now we have 2 blocks, but in row 2 we're going to need 2 blocks because we're growing by 1 block every row. So now we have this weird little thing, and if you put them together, you might be tempted to put them like this, but you need to kind of just rotate this first block. And we're going to skip these first 3 double crochets because these are the double crochets from the first row. And so there's 1, 2, and 3. We're going to skip each of those and then work into the space that was created by the chain 3, actually the chain 6, but the chain 3 space right there. So we're going to slip stitch into that space. And then we chain 3, 2, and 3, and then work 3 double crochets into that same space. So you get really good at counting to 3 and 6. And we have 1 more. And see how I'm kind of sliding. See how I'm kind of sliding these double crochets over just to give myself a little bit more room, and then it also squares up that last edge because they can kind of go a little wonky, and then you just square it up a little bit. So there is my second row. And will turn and chain 6, 4, 5, and 6. We repeat this over and over again until until your project is as wide as you want it to be, and then we'll start decreasing. So here's the corner where we started, and when you're counting your blocks, the chart, if you're working from a chart, will be positioned like this, but you're really going to be looking at it most of the time diagonally. So the way that I count the blocks in one row, it's like plates on a stegosaurus or mountaintops. So we count 1, 2, 3, and we know that we have 3 blocks. And until we start decreasing, the number of blocks will correspond to the row number that we're on. So that's a nice way to remember to keep track of what row you're on, at least while you're getting the hang of the increasing. I am ready to change colors on this next block, and here I've worked the chain 3 and 3 double crochet, except that I haven't finished off this last double crochet. So we finish off with the other color, the new color, and I will leave a tail here and pull the new yarn through the 2 loops on the hook. And I tighten down this old color and start working with the new. And because I'm going to, the pattern calls for 5 blocks of the main color, followed by 1 contrast, and then another main color. So it's red, white, red. So I'm actually going to carry this red yarn, so that leaves 2 tails that I don't have to weave in later. So I lay the red yarn over that chain 3 space and kind of work it into them as one. And so you make sure that you go under that red tail and pull through, and you just kind of snug things up there at the join, and then you can work this block as usual. So there's my chain 3. Get myself some more yarn, and then we double work those 3 double crochet over the tail and the chain 3. Try not to work with it. And because we only have 1 block to work in that white, we're going to finish off with this red. And because it's right here, it's really easy to transition. So just like when we were working the regular blocks, those double crochets can slide across that chain 3, and the tail can also slide through those, of course. So you want to snug that up, and that you can see that it kind of it closes up the gap, I guess. So we finish off with those last. We finish off that last double crochet with the new color. And I look ahead to my pattern and I don't see any more whites, so I'm going to let that go. And then I work my next block in the red, as usual. I've just come across an example of where I can follow 2 of my rules for carrying the yarn. So I've just worked a series of red blocks, but then I have 3 white blocks in a row. So my rule says that if I have one block in between 2 of the same color, so red, white, red, or white, red, white, it's really hard to say, then I can carry the yarn across. So in this case I would carry the red, but then also I can carry the yarn if the yarn that I want to carry matches the block that it would be carried across. So if you get confused about what to match, it's the chain space. So the yarn that I'm carrying matches the chain space of these 2 blocks, and so that means that I can actually carry that yarn without having to cut it. So that's what I'll do. So just to remind you, you can hold the yarn across that chain 3 space, or across the chain 3 rather, and work over it. So you can see here that the yarn is coming from behind, but I'm working with just the white yarn over that red and kind of holding them together. Oops, thought it was 4 chains for some reason. So this block is like most of the blocks that you'll see that where you can carry the yarn. They're just single squares. And now we'll continue to carry this yarn, so you can see that it's coming underneath all these double crochets, and just let it lay there across the next block. And we work over it here as well. And this will just kind of hide. It's actually even better than the red, white, red combination. And you will see a little bit of that color peeking through. Once I'm finished with this, I'll show you what it actually does look like. But that's one of the things that I just decided I can live with. You can make up your own rules for how you want to carry the yarns, but I figured the payoff was better. I can live with a tiny bit of yarn peeking through. Like here you can see a little bit of the white, but I'm okay with that. You can see a little bit of the red right here and here. But I think that's the nature of the crochet, because you're going to see a little bit of red peeking out anyway as you're working over it. So decide what you can and cannot live with and make up your own rules. But this is just at least a starting point for how I did it. So here's my 3rd white block, and I'm working into that as well. Working over it rather. So I slip stitch and make my next block. And that red yarn will be ready to work the next red block in the series. And it actually will be right here and ready to finish off this final double crochet of this block. So there's my chain 3, and then 3 double crochets. I finish off. See, it's right in the best place for it right now. So you can see it kind of travels up the side, but that's gonna kind of be hidden by this block that's next to it, and I'm not too worried about that. So fewer ends gets a thumbs up in my book. So now we will go to my pattern. In this row we have 2 more blocks, 2 red blocks, and we'll be done. And in this case I'm not going to work over the white yarn. I'll just let that hang. I like to not cut this tail quite yet, just just in case I need it on the next row, but also because I don't like to hunt for my ball of yarn. It just makes it a little bit easier. With all these ends, it's easier to get, you know, lost to figure out where your yarn actually is, your working yarn is. We have our last block of the row. So we need to treat this a little bit differently so we don't continue to grow widthwise, but we still need to grow it lengthwise. So to start decreasing, we will actually just slip stitch into this final chain 3 space, and that's it. We won't chain 6. Instead, we'll turn and chain 1. And then we don't want to work it, like I said, we don't want to work another block into this chain space. We want to work into this next one right here. But we need to work our way across to get there because that's too long of a stretch. So instead, we will slip stitch into these first 3 double crochet. And then we will slip stitch into that chain space like we've been doing all along. So those are our slip, and then chain 3, 2, 3, and we'll work the 3 double crochet and create our first block like we've been doing on all the other blocks. You can see here that this is where I have slipped across those double crochets, and so that's my decrease right there, and my first block of this row is right here. And according to my pattern, this is the widest that it's going to be. If you're making a blanket, it's probably going to be a little bit longer than a few more rows longer than it is wide. So you will need to increase in this stitch for a few more rows. But for this pattern, this heart pattern, this is the last block in the length as well. So now we will begin decreasing on every row. So we will chain 1 and slip across and work our way down, and we will eventually be working just fewer and fewer blocks as we get to this corner, that in our imaginary rectangle here, this corner up here. So this is where it flies by, and it gets really satisfying that it's so quick.